Welcome to Long Shadow's first virtual wine tasting meeting. Because it's our first, we're going to do our best to make this enjoyable, but we are going to encourage you to critique us afterwards so we can even get better. My name is Alan Shoup, and I know I've met a lot of you, but I also know that I haven't met most of you. So let me just offer a quick bio of my wine career. 40 years ago, after leaving the Gallo Winery as a marketing director, I started working at Chateau Saint Michel. I spent the next 20 years at Saint Michel as CEO, building that winery and the Columbia Crest Winery, along with many other small brands and small wineries and some large vineyards, into one of America's largest wine companies. After I retired in 2000, I put my heart and soul into creating Long Shadows. You're now going to meet our premier winemaker, Gilles Nicole, and Dane Narbites, our highly experienced president. It will be they who will answer most of your questions. So with no further ado, let me introduce Dane Narbites, our president.
All right, well, hello and happy Friday, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Dane Narbites, and I'm president at Long Shadows. I've started at the winery in 2005, and prior to that, I spent 12 years working for Robert Mondavi Winery, as well as Kendall Jackson Winery, and a local distributor here in Seattle. And so 27 years all in the wine industry. And after 27 years, you feel like you've seen or experienced most everything, but these are certainly unique and different times. And here we are doing a Zoom call, a virtual wine tasting with 150 or 200 people all connected remotely. And we just appreciate you being here. We appreciate you being a part of it. When we decided to do this virtual tasting, we wanted it to be ideally as interactive as possible. But obviously with the number of people that we have on the call, we knew it would be really challenging to have everybody's microphones on and talking over one another. It would be kind of total chaos. So instead, what we're encouraging you to do is activate the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. There should be a chat icon. And if you click on that, you should get a box that pops up, maybe a sidebar. And you can type in your questions to us in the box there. I'm going to be doing my best to answer questions or at least direct them to Gilles. And then we have Nina and Sarah here as well, and they're going to be responding to those directly for you. The other thing that we encourage you to do is in the upper right-hand corner of your screen is it should say either speaker view or gallery. And we suggest that you put it in speaker view. If it's in gallery right now, it probably looks like something out of Hollywood Squares, probably have 40 or 50 screens opened up, taking up your monitor, but we encourage you to put it into speaker view, and that way you'll be isolated on whoever is speaking or talking about the wines. And I think that pretty much does it for the tutorial portion of the Zoom call. We can get into why we all really tuned in here today, which is to talk about our new releases, our 2017 vintages. Today we're going to be tasting our 2017 Dance Chardonnay, our 2017 Saggi, and 2017 Feather Cabernet. And if you have these wines on hand and can taste along with us, certainly all the better, but definitely not required. You know, any bottle or glass of something tasty that you have will do just fine. Really, what's most important is just that we get a chance to connect, pull a few corks, talk about wine, and get the weekend started off right. So I'm going to turn it over to Gilles, our head of winemaking. He's at the winery in Walla Walla.
Hey, hi everybody. Thank you so much, Dan. So yeah, I'm Gilles Nico, and I've seen a lot of names that I recognize there, and usually I see you like right in front of me, and today I guess we have to be distancing. So maybe it's good for you because, you know, I'm French. So since I'm by myself, I didn't really shower, but that's just being French, you know. But so it's really an honor to be here anyway. And at the winery, for say, you know, I love the winery. So usually I see you in different restaurants or different setting. And now you can see me at the winery. So that's perfect. Just to give a quick little reminder of my bio, I did a 4-year degree for viticulture and winemaking in the south of France in the early 90s. And then in 1994 came to United States, so about 26 years ago, but I've been making wine in the Columbia Valley. And so when Alan started Long Shadows Vintners in 2003, I was at Woodard Canyon back then, and it was really inspiring how he was able to bring those different winemakers from around the world and to kind of forecast the diversity of the Columbia Valley into different core wines that we produce with them. And as a winemaker, it was really exciting, and I wanted to be part of the venture. And you know, 17 years later, I'm still here, so I must be doing something good. And I think it's really kind of a teamwork that we're doing. And I'm really happy to be here, guys. And I'm happy that so many people are joining us today on that kind of new virtual testing. It's kind of strange for me to talk alone in that little room, I tell you that. But anyway, I think quickly before we talk about the wine, we should also, for who does not really know the region around here, talk about the Columbia Valley, because it's a very unique wine region, but north of Oregon and kind of just against Canada. So a lot of people at the beginning, they think, shit, wow, they can really, you know, make those big Cabernet Sauvignon and Syrah, Merlot. And yes, we can, because actually we're more a continental weather past the mountains. So like Willamette Valley north of us do amazing Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, because they have more the influence of the ocean and a little bit cooler climate. For us, during the growing season, it's really warm. And yet we have cool nights, but we get to like 100 degrees, 105. I've seen 110 degrees out there during the growing season. So we can really produce wine with amazing intensity, concentration, and what we do here at Long Shadows, I think it's pristine. So I'm really excited to share that. Today we're going to be testing 3 wines. 2017 Dance Chardonnay, the 2017 Saggi, and the 2017 Feather. We're going to be talking about that. And actually 2017 was beautiful vintage, where I think it reminds me a little bit more of the 2009, where it started really kind of cool in the spring, like wet, cool, kind of slow to start with. And then during like the end of June, July, August, perfect weather, where it never spiked on heat, because too much heat is sometimes not good, but where it was really consistent with the heat and cool nights. And it was perfect for physiological maturity and development of the tannins, and all the kind of the color, pigmentation, and the flavor profile, especially where we were able to preserve some of that vibrant character. And as a vintage like that for Chardonnay, it was perfect. So let's talk a little bit about the Chardonnay, the Dance 2017, which is a project we started with Alain. And before I go much further, maybe you see behind me, we're here at the winery, we're overlooking kind of the cellar, like 20 feet down, cellar kind of underground little bit. So, you know, to help a little bit with keeping some nice, cool, you know, almost like a cellar. It's not an underground cellar, but we're definitely against the hill over there. But anyway, so talking about the Chardonnay, it's a project that we started over 10 years ago with Alan. We wanted to create a Chardonnay we could be proud of. So we looked at different sources and different techniques on how to make that Chardonnay. And it's really like 2014, we were getting there. I know it took a while to really perfect it. And 2015, what we did though, is we set aside 2 barrels and say, you know, instead of bottling the Chardonnay after 10 months like everybody else, let's keep it on lees and do a lees contact to try to increase that complexity and the mouthfeel. And so we bottled most of the production after 10 months, and 2 barrels were left 17 months on lees, and at bottling, this wine was gorgeous. So 2016 came along, and we did half the production in bottling after 10 months and half the production as extended aging. And with Alan and Dan, we thought that's what we want to do. It's extended aging. The complexity that came through it was extraordinary. So then 2017, it's 100% of the production. We keep the Chardonnay 17 months on lees. And that's how, at the same time, we can increase the complexity with the lees aging, but at the same time keeping some vibrant character by doing less malolactic. So we do about half malolactic. I should also talk about the vineyards a little bit. It comes 100% from the Yakima Valley. One is a Boucher vineyard, and the other one is the French Creek vineyards, kind of old vines planted in the mid-80s, and just brings beautiful grapes. Both Chardonnay, both sides were planted actually from a Winte clone. And I love that clone. It brings nice, perfect clusters, not too tight. The berries not too small, but very controlled on the size. And so we do whole handpick, and we do whole cluster pressing. And to bring more complexity, even more layers to the Chardonnay, we do 1/3 fermentation in cement, like concrete eggs, kind of trendy right now. And then we do 1/3 in neutral barrel and 1/3 in brand new French oak barrels. And so that's how we manage that Chardonnay overall.
Hey, Gilles, a couple of questions are coming in already. We've had some people asking about the 2017 vintage and which vintages you would compare that to, previous vintages that you see some similarities with.
So 2017, probably the one that would be the closest to it would be 2009. And then after that, I'd say probably 2013. So 2010 and 2011 were much cooler, which were beautiful for, you know, white wine as well. But 2017, because it was a little bit cooler, but still a nice warm vintage, then I'd say 2009, 2012, 2013.
And then another question just came through. They were curious about what we do as far as fining and filtering on the Chardonnay.
So we do fine and we do filter the Chardonnay. So first we do fine it to be able to make it heat stable. There's always some proteins into the Chardonnay. So the nice thing about keeping the Chardonnay longer in barrels is it gets more and more stable as it stays longer in concrete tank and in barrel. So by the time comes bottling, we check the stability of the wine, and if it's not quite heat stable with the proteins, so that means that if the wine gets a little bit too warm, then you're gonna have a precipitation of the proteins. And nobody wants kind of that murky wine, so we want a nice clean wine. So we're gonna put a little bit of bentonite to precipitate out in the tank previous to bottling all the proteins. And so then we're gonna filter it and we're gonna bottle it. And so the thing is, we really don't over process our wine ever. So it's sometimes if you heat the bottle a little bit too much, if something happens to the bottle, you're still gonna see some precipitation. We just want to make it where it's gonna be very stable for normal use somehow, but it's not over processed at all. So if you'd like, maybe we can go through some of the wine. And so actually, I was reading a headline and mentioning that more and more people are drinking on the job because, you know, we are doing like work at home. And so I was thinking, welcome to my life, guys. I drink, drink on the job as a winemaker. It's like every day, but usually we spit as we drink or taste the wine. And but today I'm not going to spit because I have a microphone right there. And nobody wants me to start spitting.
You're allowed to go.
So I think you really, I don't know how many of you guys are testing the Chardonnay with me right now, but I really like the creaminess that comes through it because we still do about 50% malolactic, where malolactic is a fermentation of the malic acid, kind of more like tart, green apple, into malic acid, into lactic acid, which is more like lactose, where it's going to bring some creaminess, some butteriness, and a beautiful mouthfeel to it. But the thing is, in Washington State, the amount of malic acid in the Chardonnay is really high. So when you do 100% malolactic, then you totally lose the balance, the brightness, the liveliness of the Chardonnay towards something very creamy and buttery, and sometimes make it flabby and too flat, actually. So we do 100% malolactic in the new barrels. We do 0 malolactic on the concrete to really try to bring up that minerality from the tank. And then on the neutral barrel, we do some malolactic, some no malolactic. So once we eventually make the blend together, then it's about 50% malolactic in the wine. But just a little bit of malolactic already, 50% malolactic, you can definitely get that creaminess in the nose. And
Gilles,
yes.
I know we do some extended aging on the Chardonnay here. Had a couple questions come through about aging potential for this Chardonnay. What would you recommend?
Probably about 5 minutes. Oh, no, but you know, I think as Chardonnay, myself, more and more, like I love to put aside my Rieslings and everything. I love older Riesling. Chardonnay, I will not give it more than 5, 6 years, although it's just gonna get, you know, it's gonna evolve toward a lot more complex, yellowish and whatnot. And with different type of food, it could go really, really well. It's not that it's gonna go bad, it's just gonna evolve in, I love that brightness in the Chardonnay. That's why we're trying to enhance it and preserve it. But as you're gonna keep it longer in your cellar, you're gonna lose a lot of that freshness, of that apples and kind of white blossom that's still there, underlying. And so let's take a little sippy sip. And I think it really shows in the mouthfeel as well that we did 50% malolactic because you really get that brown mouthfeel. It's viscous, a good viscosity to it, which really, by keeping it so long on lees, helps also getting some of that broad, long finish and kind of just some good material to it. And but at the same time, because we did only 50% malolactic, you have that bright acidity, and it really keeps it very lively. And I had to compare sometimes different regions or whatnot, but it almost has that little bit of acidity reminiscent from Burgundy also, with a little bit of Pierre de Feu, we call it, like more like a flint somehow. And I really love that complexity to it, that layer of flavor profile. So I hope you're enjoying the Chardonnay with me at the same time. Any other questions on the Chardonnay? Then?
No, I think that's it. We can go on to the Saggi.
Perfect. So Saggi, Saggi, it started in 2004. Actually, most of the wines at Long Shadow started in 2003. Saggi started in 2004 with Giovanni and his dad Ambrogio Folonari. So they're in Greve from Tuscany. And what we wanted to create all together at Long Shadows with Alan and Dan and the Folonaris was more like a super Tuscan style wine, with more and more looking at Sangiovese, although Sangiovese back then in 2004 was still just coming into Washington State, so it was young vines, and Sangiovese is not necessarily a very easy varietal to grow, and it's not easy to make either, actually. But as we got a good handle on the viticulture aspect of it, and as the vines got more and more matures, we were able to get beautiful clusters with small berries or smaller berries, and be able to, over the year, get that intensity of the Sangiovese, at the same time preserving that vibrant character. Sangiovese is very vibrant. And so from the beginning, 2004, 2005, 2006, we were more like around 35, 40% Sangiovese. Nowadays, we're at 60% Sangiovese into the Saggi. And at the same time, we bring a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon to bring kind of more the backbone, and some Syrah, more like a little bit of spice to it. And so it's kind of a very gusto wine somehow, you know, from Italy, is a gusto where it's a little bit like true love where, you know, you put a couple characters together and they make only one. So I guess that would be the Sangiovese and the Cabernet Sauvignon, and then the Syrah will be the spice in life that just brings it back to life. And Sangiovese is really, or the Saggi, a very complete wine because of that blend together. And definitely bring some liveliness and vibrancy, but somehow, I have not used that analogy before, but when you have a wine that's so delicate as Sangiovese, if you try in the vineyard and at the winery to make a wine that the grapes doesn't want to be, if you try to force it, it's almost when you kind of rub the hair like against the growth somehow. And then where it starts to be kind of a granular and harsh or disjointed. So what you want to do is kind of polish it alongside with the grain, and it's very polished and it makes it very beautiful, more like sophisticated. And that Saggi there, but I have decanter right there, is all this, and usually pairs really well with wine and with food, and at the same time cellar really well over the year. Any question then yet?
Well, I actually have a question. I think the 17's tasting great. It's obviously drinkable now, but it's one of my favorite wines in our lineup to lay down and give it some age. I like how the Sangiovese kind of fleshes out and softens up. What would you suggest as far as cellaring on this wine?
I think with a nice gentle decanting, I decanted this one like about 1 hour ago, and I like it kind of gentle. I don't like when we shake it and everything, I know as a winemaker, we take good care of the wine in the winery. And so I like to always be gentle with the wine and take, be patient with it. But, and so if you do that, it's going to be showing really well right now. But Sangiovese, at the same time, the Saggi, we had not that long ago, the 2005. And there's that complexity, the darkness. It edges because of the acidity, and you have nice little structure. You have the Cabernet Sauvignon in there, and the Syrah that makes it a little bit more flush. And so I'd say, if you can give it 10 years in a good, constant temperature cellar, it's just going to get better and more complex over the years. I agree with you, Dan. It's beautiful wine to cellar.
Here's another question, Gilles, from Chris McKillop. He's curious, what makes the Sangiovese so difficult to make? Is it the vines or is it the vinification?
Thanks, Chris, for the question. I think there's many different layers to it. One of the difficulty in the vineyard about it is that it's a very vigorous plant. And so at the beginning, like Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot, we thought, let's try to plant the Sangiovese because it's so vigorous into some rocks, more like rocky soils, and to try to temper down a little bit that vigorousness. And the thing is, then the canopy you lose the control of the canopy pretty fast, where it starts turning. When it gets too hot, you need to put more water. So you try to put more water at irrigation in the vineyard, because we didn't really talk about it, but at the Columbia Valley, it gets so hot and so dry during the growing season. If you don't put irrigation to the vines, you get nothing. Nothing grows besides sagebrush with a rattlesnake underneath. So you really have to use controlled irrigation. It doesn't take very much, but controlled irrigation to be able to grow the vines. With Sangiovese in rocky block, then you start putting the water to try to maintain that canopy, and it all goes toward the grapes. And so you put more water to try to get the foliage going, and all the vigor, all that energy always goes to the cluster, and the cluster end up to be big berries, sometimes so tight. So the berries get so big and so tight, but if you look just at the outside, it looks nice and dark and black. And if you take the berry off the cluster, and you look at the base of the berry, it's green because there is no sunlight. It's so big and juicy. And so somehow at the beginning, we were having a hard time to get the proper Sangiovese. And I don't want to make it too long of an answer for that. So what we did is then we went to Boucher Vineyard and we went to Candy Mountain, where the soil is not very rich, but is very uniform throughout, like more gravelly, not rocky, but more gravelly with some good dirt. And as the root system gets bigger and bigger, then you can really control the canopy so much better. So we have now the mature, good mature vineyard on Sangiovese, and in the right spot where it's not rocky, it's not too rich, but it's beautiful, kind of more like a little pebbles in there. And now we can grow the exact grapes that we want for Sangio. Does it make sense?
Makes sense. Gilles, Colin Larson sent in a question. He asked, what, if anything, has changed with the winemaking at Saggi since the Polinaris have stopped traveling to the winery to collaborate?
Well, yeah, that's why it's so good now. No, so basically, you know, you know, it's really always been a teamwork at Long Shadows Vintners, and so I've been here since inception with Alan and you then, and we always work together in creating a wine in Washington State that reflects of the terroir, without really necessarily duplicating what they were doing in their own country. So it's not like we're trying to make a wine that totally tastes like the wine from Giovanni in Greve. What we want to do is do the best we can with the Columbia Valley grapes. So we've developed it over the last 15, 16 years. And so Alan and you then and myself, we've been here being part of creating the wine. So we just look at the style that we created and we just go on. And I think it's just gonna, we always look to make the wine better and better. We just don't stop there. Actually, Alan is always there asking me, so what is gonna be the next new equipment we're gonna buy? You know, if you don't buy equipment right now, we're really happy with the quality of the wine right now. But if you don't try to renew the equipment or trying to get better, then you just stay stagnant. So it's always important to be able to try to get better and better. And I think that's what we do well at Long Shadows.
Another question for you, Gilles. Have you seen any climate changes in the past few years? And how's that affecting grapes?
I think there's a trend for sure, but right now, you know, trend is not a very straight line necessarily either. You know, the curve always go up and down a little bit like Wall Street almost, where it's hard to be able to see on a long-term weather pattern, whereas has a tendency to go like when I came in the 90s, we had few really hot vintages already and some much cooler. And so like 1998 was damn hot. It was really hot, beautiful vintage though. 2004 was really cold. Then we went into 2006, 7, 8, getting warmer and warmer. And then we got nailed by 2010 and 11 that were way cold, much colder than any vintages I had seen in Washington State so far. And then we got 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, getting warmer and warmer, 17, 18, 19, now a little bit cooler. So I don't really see a pattern where I can say, oh, it's getting, I don't think I can really see it, you know, but I know it's happening. So we have to be conscientious about it. And although the vineyards take very little water and the Columbia Valley, so far we have so much water. We have all the water coming from the Rockies, from the Canada, from all the Cascade Mountains. So all the water drains towards the Columbia Valley. So we have a huge amount of water with the Columbia River, and underneath, because of the Missoula floods that happened 15,000 years ago, we have a lot of water underground as well. But I think it's really important nowadays that we know better to be conscientious with Mother Nature. And so I think we're really good as a growers to be able to do that actually, if it makes sense. So I think maybe we should try the Saggi and see how smooth it is in the mouth and lively also. And in the nose, because of that Sangiovese, that's about 59, 60% now, you really get that wild, ripe strawberry. You know, in strawberry, you know, sometimes when you go hike in the mountain and you see those wild strawberries and it's really ripe, somehow there's that flavor right there in the glass. Yeah, so there is a good texture, probably coming from the Cabernet Sauvignon essentially, but very, very soft, very silky, very polished. And I really like this. It goes for a long, because of good acidity, it's probably our red wine that has the most acidity, and it really shows it. It's just like vibrant. I love this about this wine. So we keep this wine 16 months in 100% French oak, or about 65% new. But for this, because we don't want too much oak influence into the wine, so we use very delicate French oak barrels. We just want kind of that structure. We just want more like the texture and the complexity of the oak coming into the Sangiovese, into the Saggi. So any other question then?
No, I think we can move on to the Feather.
All right, Ben. Well, I don't know. That was good, actually. So Feather started in 2003, and that's our partner on this one is Randy Dunn, kind of the lonesome cowboy on top of the Hall Mountain over there, and he's like very down to earth, and I really love working with him. He's a really good winemaker as well. And so the Hall Mountain is one of his AVA within the Napa Valley. So basically, Randy Dunn's been making wine in Napa Valley since the early 70s and was at Camus at the beginning. So he made the wine with the Wagner family, like he started special selection there, and pretty soon got his property on the Hall Mountain and dedicated his winemaking career to 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. So again, we don't want to duplicate what they do because it's different terroir anyway. So we don't want to duplicate, but we want somehow to bring the techniques and the style of wine that they have developed. And so that's why Feather is 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. And so we use quite a bit of new oak. Cabernet Sauvignon can really excel in oak. So it's 100% French oak, about 90% new. So there is a lot of investment that goes into this wine, but I think it really delivers. And we really go low yield because Randy does not like very high maturation, like it, when it gets too high breaks, or like the tenor of sugar gets too high, then it translates directly into alcohol, and he rather keeps it down, play a little bit on the alcohol. And so what we do is we go low yield, and so we really, by having a very low yield, we're able to get a better maturation, physiological maturation and development of the flavors, good tannins profile. And so by the time we harvest it, always 100% hand pick, as always at Long Shadows, then we can really get a good flavor development, a good intensity of the color, and yet a little bit lower sugar. And so this way, it's just like, as in the description that you usually talk about, we say that the Feather is kind of an iron fist in the velvet glove. And I think it's kind of a good description because it has some good structure to it. But if you check the 17 already, I would decant it at least for maybe 2.5 hours, always gently. And but it's already show really well. But this one, 15 years from now, is going to be incredible. So maybe we should try it. I hope most of you guys are trying it with me, because that's one of the things about being more like on the distancing is right now I'm by myself with 3 bottles of wine. So it's going to be a long night, guys. Yeah, it's Cabernet Sauvignon sometimes can be a big animal, and where this one is, it's very refined on how the flavor comes through in the nose. It's very delicate actually, which is beautiful. And although we're trying to get a little bit less high maturation, we don't want a riper style like we're talking about. There is no herbaceous to it. It's just that beautiful little dark berries to it, some cassis, and even some spice as well. 100% cab. Yeah, it has tannins for sure. It's a baby, 2017, just released, but love it. It's very firm tannins, but at the same time, again, refined, polished tannins. It's beautiful. And I think for that, the Columbia Valley is amazing for it. Like we have a lot of concentration of tannins and color and flavors, but it doesn't really bring the harshness out, especially we source a lot of the grapes from the Horse Heaven Hills. And the Horse Heaven Hills has always that silkiness about it. And then we have also some of the grapes coming from Dionysus, and Dionysus brings a little bit more the body and some blackberry to it, and it's really fun to work with. And then we have also Winebow vineyard, that's the Walluk slope, and the Walluk slope is beautiful slope. It's just about as hot as a Red Mountain, and that's where we get a little bit more of that, like. Any question right now, then?
Yeah, we had a question about the barrel program as far as whether or not you toast the barrels.
Yeah, so that's true. I didn't talk too much about the barrels yet. So yeah, 100% of the barrels are toasted. So, but then when you do a toast in the barrel, you can do a light toast, or you could do like a medium long, where it's kind of on small on fire, more like a light toast, but long time on the fire. Or then you go into medium toast, medium plus, heavy toast. So what we do more and more, as we worked with our partner and we do experimentation, we look at what works the best with a Columbia Valley fruit. We've done actually a lot more lately, some of the medium long toast. So it's a small fire, almost like a light toast, but then we keep it for a long time. So it does not burn the wood, so it doesn't bring that char that takes over the fruit. So we really want to preserve the fruit and enhance what the wine, what the grapes has there to give us. But then it goes deeper into the barrel. So instead of being just superficial, we take a long toast and go deep into the wood, and that brings a lot of delicate flavor to it. And I think we do that more and more across our wines from different forests. So it's not the same barrel for all our wine, but the toast more and more is that slow toasting. Then for Feather, we keep it for 22 months and about in 90% new barrels like we talked about.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about the differences and even the similarities between Washington and California as far as a growing region. I get asked a lot, especially with Randy's Cabernet, as far as what those differences are.
Yeah, so definitely New World, it's a lot more similar between Washington State and Napa than if we look at Bordeaux. Bordeaux is a whole different animal by itself. But if we just compare Napa and more the Columbia Valley, I think we're a lot more continental, where we're so much north and a little bit more east, then we have a very different type of growing season compared to Napa, where we start the growing season later. Usually mid-April is when you start seeing the bud break, the beginning of the growing season. And then if you think about it, we're so much more north than Napa Valley. In June, when it's the longest day of the year, we're like more than 1 hour of sunlight compared to Napa Valley. We have 1 more hour of sunlight a day, and where we can really get caught up on the maturation of the grapes. And then when it comes closer to harvest, when we want a little bit more hang time, we don't want as much heat outside, we just want a nice cluster in nice cool nights, then guess what? It's when our days are getting much shorter again. And so then we're able to hang the grapes longer and preserve a lot more of that acidity and enhance the vibrant character of the fruit. And so I think that's where we have a little bit, when you test Washington State or Columbia Valley against Napa Valley, we have a little bit more of that vibrancy. Again, I say vibrant a lot, but it's what it is. And when Napa Valley has Sonoma in between, Sonoma is definitely much cooler. And so that's why they do beautiful also Pinot Noir and Syrah, and they do a lot. But there's still a good influence in Napa Valley, especially with the fog. When you think about the fog and everything from the ocean, yet they're quite a bit more south. So if it was not for the ocean, then it would be more like Central Valley, where it would be like an oven over there. So they're lucky to have actually the influence of the ocean. But every terroir is very different. And even if you took the Columbia Valley, within the Columbia Valley that Allen developed in the 80s, then there is a lot of sub-appellation, like the Yakima Valley AVA, the Red Mountain AVA. If you take these two AVAs, Yakima Valley, Red Mountain, they touch each other at one point, Yakima Valley being one of the coolest spots in Washington State, in the Columbia Valley, I should say, and then Red Mountain, one of the warmer spots. So it's like very drastic changes sometimes because of the slopes and the way the land is laid out. But so yeah, I think everything is a little bit different then. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. The O'Briens had a question here. They were curious about how the vines were trained in 2017. Was there any sort of special trellising that you did?
Yeah, so so you know, the trellis is something you develop over the year, and most of the time, like 95% of the trellis is just a VSP, so vertical shoot positioning, with the two cordon, you know, and then you have the wire, and then you just have a straight canopy going up. So that's always kind of the same, but where it gets tricky is really to try to have a canopy in balance with a fruit zone, which is going to reflect of the season. So when you start in April and May and June, you don't know how hot it's going to be in July and August. It's going to be really our month where we can really cook the fruit like so much, where if you have direct sunlight on the fruit in July and August, you're going to get some sunburn, you're going to lose all the vibrancy, you're going to lose the acidity we are talking about, you're going to lose a lot of the even pigmentation, color pigmentation. So it's really important to have a good handle on the canopy during the growing season, and where you want to encourage the length of the canes early on, so you have a nice healthy canopy, and then start doing some shoot positioning and making sure that the fruit zone is nice and open. So if you put your head inside the canopy, you can look at the fruit zone and there is no congestion, where the cluster hangs nice, and then there's no leaves against the clusters, and that's when you can really optimize the maturation. And if you see that the season, like 2017, never gets really, really hot, then you start opening up the east side, like the morning sun, and you start opening up that side of the canopy so you can get more sun in the morning. In the morning, the sun is not as strong, so you can start really getting good light into the canopy. And then as harvest comes closer and closer and the sun is not as strong, then you can start opening the west side, more like the afternoon side of the canopy, to bring even more light and increase the amount of color, the intensity of the color and the flavor profile, the maturation. So it's not like we have to change how we prune the vines and everything, but the canopy management is really tricky, because sometimes we think, oh, wow, this is going to be a cool vintage. And so you do all the thinning, and once a sudden, then the big hit comes. So you really have to be careful with the yield and the canopy. It's a kind of very touchy program there.
Jill?
Yeah.
I saw one of the questions that came up was how much production do we have? And I thought I might answer that myself by saying that basically we let demand pretty much drive production, but coincidentally, we have about the same demand for all 6 of our red wines. And the production of each of them is somewhere in the area between 2,000 and 3,000 cases. So each of these wines is truly boutique in size. And that's how we want to keep them. We intend to grow, but we intend to grow at a slow rate. Right now, 70% of the wine is sold direct through our wine clubs and retail shops. The rest is sold through distributors, and there it goes to fine wine shops and restaurants. We have the anomaly right now in which we can't sell to restaurants, so how that's going to change things, we really don't know. But by and large, because we have so much consumer support, we're not worried about survival or anything like that. So just interject that.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Yeah, and at the same time, we also want to grow the wines where there's always availability for the quality grapes, quality, and Alan and then always say that whenever we make a blend, what comes first is not production, it's quality, and that's been true for 17 years. So anything else I should emphasize on?
I'm going to jump in and brag on you, Gilles, real quick, because I know you're too humble to do it yourself, and also Randy. But a question did come up about reviews on the 2017 vintage and whether or not we'd received any. And so I thought I should point out that just last week we got our first reviews on the 17 vintage, and the 2017 Feather received 95 plus points from Jeb Dunnick, who used to review for Wine Advocate. And the Saggi received 92 points and the Dance 90 points. So as the sales guy, I'm obligated to point out as well that the wines are available on the website while they last. And you know, I know many of you ordered them for the tasting, but we do, because Alan said, you know, with restaurants being shut down right now, we do have more allocations available on the website than maybe we normally do.
So yeah, it's been very exciting for a winemaker to be able to work for 25 years in Washington State in the Columbia Valley. It's has so much diversity, and we can really, a winemaker can really be creative. Sometimes you go back to France, and if depending on the region you go to, they're gonna ask you to make a Syrah or Pinot Noir or Chardonnay or, you know, Riesling. It's never exactly the same. You always do the same over there. In the Columbia Valley, as a winemaker, it's really exciting. The creativity is through the roof. And at the same time, I think it's also great for you guys to be able to explore our wines, because sometimes you're going to find a little Roussanne, or it's going to be, you know, maybe even a Sangiovese or Barbera, or then you're going to go and it might be a Tempranillo. And then us here, we do all these 7 core wines, plus we have the 9 hats line. And it's just, you know, for a winemaker, incredible to be able to work with all these different type of wine, because it's always a learning curve. You know, as a winemaker, it's not a recipe. So each year, each wine will keep learning and learning. And for me, each harvest, each year, it's just been incredible to be able to be here, especially with such a unique venture that Alan did put together. It's like we get to work with really some of the most prominent, sought after, renowned winemakers from around the world, international winemakers coming to see us here in Walla Walla. It's been just incredible.
Alan, we did get the question, maybe you can answer this one. Somebody was curious how you came up with the concept and the idea of bringing these winemakers to Washington State.
I can't take any credit for that idea. The first person to do it, to my knowledge, was Bob Mondavi, when he did the joint venture with the Baron Rothschild to create Opus One. He did that in the late 70s. And when I took over Saint Michel, well, to go back, in those days, Napa Valley could not sell its wines in the East Coast. Everybody was just, you know, buying French wines. That particular project really shined the light on Napa. And so as much as it helped Mondavi, I think it really brought Napa to the forefront, and by extension, California. So when I got to Washington, of course, nobody had ever heard of Washington, and it was my goal to do the same thing. And so that's took me a while to get there, but that's how we started doing the joint ventures with Piero Antinori and Ernie Lewson. And we did one with Brian Crozier that didn't survive after I left, but I knew even then that when I retired that I was going to get into the boutique wine business, and I was going to try to do exactly that, which was to bring some of the greatest winemakers who have reputations for certain style of grapes that are consistent with the wines, with the grapes that we're growing, and see what we can do. So it's been, for all of us, a lot of fun and very exciting. I think perhaps we've exhausted everybody's time here, so it's probably, unless anybody had, Dane or Jill, you have anything else you want to add, I think I'd like to just end by re-emphasizing how much we appreciate the fact that you all spent this time with us. It's going to be a very big learning experience from us as we go through your questions. We hope to do this again, and as everything else we do, we want to get better. We don't pretend that we know even a fraction of what we should know in how to do these tasting seminars. Next time, we'll try to make Jill a little bit more enthusiastic.
I was a little bit sleepy today.
But I'll end by just saying the most important thing, and that's that we want you all to stay healthy, do all the things you need to do to stay healthy and keep your family healthy. And with that, we hope to see you again. Oh, by the way, if you do have more questions, we'll analyze all the questions you've got. We've got them trapped. But if you have more questions, you can go onto our website. There's a place at our website that would also allow you to ask questions. And we're going to see if we can find a way to get answers back to you on all the questions that were asked. I don't know if we can do all that or not, but we're going to try.
Yeah, we're going to send out a survey next week to everybody that logged in today. And as Alan said, we'd love to get your feedback. Let us know topics that you'd like us to cover, which wines you'd like us to feature. And as soon as you respond to those, we'll try and schedule another tasting for you. And in the meantime, we'd love to communicate with you on social media. So be sure and tag us at Long Shadows on Facebook or Instagram. We'd love to see and hear and you know, when you're drinking Long Shadows wines and how you're enjoying them. So everyone, stay safe, stay healthy and positive. Thanks again.